This particular event happened to me 3 years ago. I am a student at a university in a small town in Germany, but at the time this happened, I was studying German at a language school in Berlin. So yes, German is also not my mother tongue. And I was also pretty naive about my surroundings, as I came from a third world country. Everything outside the house is a hunting ground for the predator out there, as my dad would always put it. But my dad would constantly give me the impression that the first world countries are supposed to be really safe and regulated. Basically, the opposite of where we came from. So that's the mindset I've been going with, and it worked up until this happened. It started out innocently enough. In Berlin, there is an annual event called Karneval der Kulturen. You get the idea. Parades with different songs, dances, costumes from different countries, and also stands with food and individual performances of different cultures. It was a big thing, and I had a great day. Now, originally, I planned to go home after it finished at around 6 to 7 p.m, but my friends wanted to hang out a bit more. So we hung out until about 10:30 p.m. Now, it is important to note that all of my friends live at the east side of the city, and I the west. So when it was time to go home, we rode a couple of stations together before we parted ways, and I wasn't worried for going home alone at all. I mean, it wasn't even midnight yet, and this was the weekend. So there are going to be many people, right? Nope. When I split ways with my friends to ride a different train, the station was surprisingly empty. There was a couple on one side of the platform, and there was a guy on the far end of the other. So I took a seat on a nearby bench. The board says that the next train is coming in 15 minutes, which explained why the station was so empty. I had just missed the train. But no problem. 15 minutes isn't that long a wait. But boy, was it going to be the longest 15 minutes of my life. So, the guy on the far end of the platform I was waiting on walked in my general direction. He appears to be talking, but I didn't pay much attention to him, because I thought he was on the phone or something, and I was busy looking around, wondering if the train is going to come sooner. But as he got closer, I noticed how he is walking to my direction, on the bench, and still talking. No phone in sight. Okay, weird. But maybe he wanted to sit down. But what he did was stopped about 2 meters in front of me, gesturing with his hands, and at first I couldn't hear him. He smiled at me. I was caught off guard, looked at him strangely and said, "Sorry?" I found it strange that some random person would smile at me, and I believe said something in English and not German. But I didn't want to be impolite. Perhaps he needed help. "Girl, why don't you smile?" he repeated, in a pretty heavy African accent. What a weird question. So I just looked at him and didn't know what to say. "Why don't you smile? Smile, girl, you look beautiful when you smile." I was weirded out at this point, because first of all, I'm a pretty socially awkward person, and I'm not used to someone trying to hit on me. Or, that is what I initially thought. But this guy looked to be in his mid-40s, and is probably about 190 centimeters or more. I was 20 at the time, but I wasn't really looking into anyone older, so I mustered up a weak, awkward laugh. I guess he must have thought that was a green light, because he immediately lurched forward to sit close to me and asked if I spoke English, to which I said, yes, which in hindsight was stupid, as then he started asking for my name, age, where I came from, and bombarding me with all these questions, all the while caressing my thigh. I was so shocked at that moment. I tried to get away from his touch, but he still did it, seemingly unaware. I was not stupid, so I gave him a fake name and said I was 18. I thought that would deter him, but I was never more wrong, because then he started to get excited, introduced himself that he was 42 and had just come from Cameroon, and eagerly asked for my phone number, to which I said I didn't remember, which is true. But then this guy said I should go to my contacts and see my own phone number. He was smart, and I was just pretending to go along with it, because who knows how he would react otherwise. But the good thing was, he didn't bring his phone with him, and he kept insisting that we go somewhere to ask to borrow a pen. I replied with, "No, sorry, I have to go home soon," and then he proceeded to insist on taking me home. At this point, a couple noticed that something was wrong, but didn't try and help, and just kind of looked at us weirdly. I was very scared, and thought of my family at home, and how I might go missing after this. So then, I tried to answer his increasingly personal questions as vague as possible. I mean, at this point, a normal guy would notice I'm not interested, right? But he seemed unbothered and unaware, happily yapping away. The train came. Waves of relief washed over me, so I interrupted him and excused myself. He insisted I should stay and take the next train, but I said no, that I have to get home, and someone's waiting for me, and started to step towards the train. He grabbed my arm, just as I was taking my first step, and said, "Girl, I think you should stay a while with me. You can take the next train. I can take you home." I was freaking out really bad on the inside, but I managed to muster the most polite rejection possible. "I'm sorry, I need to go home now." I yanked my arm free and entered the train. I was relieved to see him sitting on the bank, and I thought it was the end. Just a bad night. I wish it were the end. As the warning chimes came in, warning passengers that the train doors were about to close, he stopped the train doors from closing and squeezed between them. My heart stopped, and he walked to my seat, which is a 2x2 seat, and he sat right in front of me saying, "Let me take you home. It's not safe out there for girls like you," while caressing both my thighs. Right. I tried to inch away from him. Now in the seats behind us were a group of teenagers, around 17 to 18. They sensed something was wrong because of my expressions, because they suddenly all fell quiet and just looked at each other. But then again, none of them did anything. So I have this guy asking me where I live, insisting he'll walk me home. At this point, I'm trying to think up plans on how to ditch this guy. But I can't go against a 190 centimeter tall dude as a medium-sized 167 centimeter girl. I need to be smarter about this. So I thought. I told him okay, but he can only drop me off at the station. He seemed really happy with that, but he said I needed to give him my number. My initial reaction was, what the hell? I can buy a new number. So I agreed. My station came around. We got off the train, and in front of the station is where another level of creepiness unfolds. "Okay, this is me. I can walk home now by myself as you promised," I said, hoping this was all over. And then he was insisting on getting my phone number. But at this time it was 11:30 p.m. and everything was closed. So he took out a bunch of keys from his pocket and asked me to write down my number on the gravels so that he could come back the next day and take notes of it. I was weirded out, but whatever, and so I tried to write down my number and thought I could sneak in some false number there and throw him off. In the middle of doing it, he kinda yanked my phone to see if I was writing the numbers right. "You gotta make sure you write it right so I can reach you tomorrow," he said. But thankfully it didn't work. I mean, the gravels move around a lot, and he wasn't able to see the numbers. He seemed agitated, and this is where I thought that I might get taken. Girl, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I don't want to lose you. What am I going to do now? He was mumbling the whole time about borrowing a pen from a passing stranger. The street was still pretty much empty, but there were 3 to 4 people passing by. I think they knew something was amiss. However, as before, no one did a thing. The whole time I was just kind of grimacing awkwardly, if you know what I mean, because I was just scared out of my wits. The whole time his eyes were on me, scrutinizing every detail of my face. I felt like screaming for help, but I don't know if anyone is going to help me judging from the reactions I got so far. And then he asked, "Don't you like me? Am I too old?" He was emphasizing his age. I didn't want to agitate this guy, so I said, "No, it's not that. It's just that I already have a boyfriend." I was cringing, bracing for impact. His face contorted in annoyance, and then he took a deep breath and asked, "Where's your boyfriend? Is he here?" To which I replied, "Yes. You're young. You date. But maybe you don't find him good. You should keep your options open," he said. Well, I'll be damned. Now he's talking about options. Like I had any at that moment? And then without missing a beat, he told me that the only way we were going to do this is for me to meet him exactly at this place tomorrow, and that he's going to trust me, and asked me to set the time. I initially said, "I don't know, you decide." But he said, "No, you tell me when. So you have to come tomorrow. Think, girl." I was panicking and just blurted out, 3 p.m. "Okay, girl, 3 p.m. I trust you." He kind of lets his grip on my hips loose, so I thought I was free. But no. He started leaning in for a kiss, to which I automatically backed out of. "No, not on the lips," he said while touching my lips with his finger. "On the cheek." He said that while giving me the wettest smooch on both cheeks. I struggled so hard to not wipe at that very moment, because I really didn't want to agitate him. So I awkwardly laughed and said, "Okay, now I'm gonna go home. See you then." To which he said, 3 p.m. I trust you." And I just laughed awkwardly and said goodbye. I made an unnecessary turn ahead and hid in the bushes in case he decided to follow me. I waited for a minute or two and booked it straight home. At home, I was freaking out. I called up to one of my friends and started crying. I also washed my face twice while violently scrubbing. I recounted the whole event with my best German to my housemate, who was an older lady in her 70s. And she just said, "Oh, that happens around here to young ladies. He probably just fancies you." I was baffled, but whatever. It was over, and needless to say, I stayed home for 2 days straight, not wanting to run into that creep again, as we don't live very far from the station.